Okay, so we're going to do a video now that shows 3 different techniques for building your armatures for your aliens. And they're sort of general techniques for building volume from flat stuff, cardboard and poster board. That will be helpful for making these sort of more curvilinear biomorphic forms that are going to be necessary for doing your alien projects. So the first technique that I want to show you involves, we're going to call it the stuffing technique. So it's sort of like stuffing a pillow, except we're going to do it with paper and cardboard and some masking tape. Okay, so for the first step, you're just going to ball up the paper, and sometimes if you want to, actually I'm going to back up 1 second. I'm starting with this sort of shape I cut out of cardboard. So you're going to cut the shape out of cardboard because the outline of the cardboard will sort of dictate one dimension of your armature. As you can see though, if I turn it sideways, it's going to be flat. And by doing that, we want to get a 3-dimensional form out of it, so we can build that by piling paper on top of it. So if I start with the masking tape, and I get long pieces, I can just pile the paper on and tape it to the armature. All right, now it looks dumb when you do the first piece, but as you continue to tape, you're going to start to use the pressure of the tape and the paper to make the shape more voluminous. Okay. So you can see I'm starting to get a little bit of a shape there. And as you continue, like I have a little hole right here that I can fill with a little bit of extra paper. Might be just a little bit too much there. And the important thing to remember is you kind of have to go all the way over it from edge to edge. So I want to go from this side onto the back here, all the way over and back to the back again. If I do that, it's going to use the tension in the tape to hold everything flat. Still not totally crazy about the form I have here, but as you can see, as you continue to go with it, I can always add a little more paper or tear some off to make it look better. All right. And if you want to have the paper on the back side, you can do that too. So if I were to do that, this is a bit of a time-consuming technique because you really got to do it bit by bit until you start to get the shape you want. You're going to really almost end up covering the entire thing with tape. But it will, if you keep after it, give you a pretty natural, like, volume. more on this edge here, so I'll put that there. Put a piece on over the top here like this. And you can try to be, you know, a little more formulaic about it than I have been. I'm kind of putting my tape in randomly wherever it looks like it needs to be. If you wanted to start at one side and kind of work your way around, you could do that. The actual hardest part of this is just getting the paper stuck there initially. Sometimes what I like to do if I have my hot glue gun out is I just put some hot glue on it until I get it, so I get the paper stuck to the cardboard first, and then I can just start putting tape on it. But you can see, like, I'm starting to have like a weird fish shape now, or whatever this thing is going to be. This is also a decent technique for doing like kind of an interior space, like you might between a pair of legs. Because you can use the paper wherever you need it. And adjust your volume. I'm just trying to get some on there first off. And I'll just make this piece one-sided for speed. You'll still get the idea. Alright, so I have all the paper stuffed in there in the middle, and then I can just, again, use the tape to kind of shape it where it needs to be. Flatter right through here. Remember, this is all going to get covered with paper mache, so you'll have an opportunity to really smooth it out, the last surface of it with the paper mache. But the paper will give you kind of a way to, or the paper and tape will kind of help you figure out how big it needs, like how chubby you need to make the thing. You can see I'm starting to get it right there. But, you know, if you wanted this leg to be fatter or something like that, you could just add more paper on top of it and then kind of work it down into there, so you can kind of make the joint whatever you need to by adding material and pulling it off. So that is one technique for building volume. This is good for doing legs. It's good for doing, if you have like a chubby looking creature that you want to make, you can do it this way. There's a number of students making fish this way, or like fish type creatures, because you can cut out the shape of the fish like this and then kind of pat it out. So that's what that technique's good for. The next technique we're going to use, I'm going to call the envelope technique. And for the envelope technique, basically it's a variation on the stuffing technique, except you're going to use a piece of poster board. 2 layers of poster board instead. So first thing I want to do is sort of draw out what shape I want. So for this, we'll pretend we're making like sort of maybe like the head of a manta ray or a snake or something like that. So I'm just going to kind of do one of these numbers here. I was not even really looking at that line. That's terrible. All right, let me see here and fix it up some. All right, so there's my shape basically. All right, and then what we'll do is we'll just cut it out. And this one's really easy and is good if you have like the kind of form that it will be suitable to this. It'll be really easy to make. That stuffing technique that I just showed you is probably the most sort of time-consuming one in a way. And this is the least time-consuming. So I have my 2 layers here, just like that. And then we're just going to tape them together along the edge. So what we want to do is we want to put the tape all the way around on the edges. Just like this. Okay. So sometimes it helps to take some little short pieces and put some short pieces across. Oops. Like that. And then to hold everything in place, and then put some longer pieces on. I got a couple shorties on there. I'll put this on, and again, it's going to get it all covered up with paper mache, so it does not need to be perfect looking. It just needs to be taped. I'm not going to lose any sleep over it if your tape is not perfect. All right. By doing this, you're basically attaching the top layer to the bottom layer, and you're going to leave one section open, and I'll show you why in just a second. I'm going to go a little further here. I'm going to go around the back side. This section here. And if you have a tight curve, you can just segment it and do a whole bunch of little pieces of tape. One more piece of tape here, just for good measure. Alright, so after you've done that, you basically can start to stuff the inside of it. Alright? I do want to do this, actually, now that I think about it. So I want to show you something. Alright, so then, just grab more paper, and you open it up, and you can start to shove it in there. And as you do that, you'll see that it makes the paper get fatter, and you can kind of shape what you want, where you want the volume by pushing the paper around inside the opening. Alright, so like I taped all the way along this back side here so that I could make this little thing a little heavier right there. So depending on the kind of forms you're using, this might be a good way to make certain shapes also. And then you can always kind of like compress your paper inside there to kind of get the shape back. So you can get kind of really interesting undulating shapes, all right? And it's all with the paperboard, with just the poster board. You could have this opening on one end that maybe it gets a neck that comes into it, and then you kind of build a transition into the neck. But this could be like a head, right? So if I put some eyeballs on it, and all of a sudden I've got a weird snake head. So that's another technique for kind of getting like a really interesting, uniform, sort of smooth, organic form that again is built out of flat stuff. The last technique is probably the most versatile in a way. It's also going to be time consuming, but you can do lots of weird and strange shapes, and that's the lattice technique. So to review real quick, we did the stuffing technique, and then we did the envelope technique, and now we're going to do the lattice technique. And to demonstrate the lattice technique, I'm going to kind of just make a sphere real quick. But you could make any number of different multi-formed multi-curvilinear shapes with this technique because it's really flexible. All right, so to start out, maybe I'll start with a circle here. 2 circles. And then I'll staple them together. Just kind of get them to sit nice. Right there looks good. And I'm using the stapler on this, but you could use hot glue just as easily. Messed up real quick, but it's not a big deal. Got ahead of myself. I should have started with 3 loops instead of just 2 for making a sphere, because I need them all to be about the same size. Let's see here. And that's pretty good. And when you're doing this technique, it's really handy just to have a pair of scissors laying around so you can trim. And then do this. All right, so in those 3 rings, now I have the makings of a sphere. All right, and then I can sort of start to just bend board and fill in. Now I'm going to switch, for the most part, to smaller pieces when I get to this stage, because it'll be easier for it to follow the bend of the sphere if you have smaller sections. So you can just put a piece on like this. Like a little piece. And then add another piece. You want to kind of try to avoid, for the most part, big long pieces that go across more than like 2 sections, because they're going to start to get weird. But the nice thing about this technique is if you don't like the curve in it, like suppose I got too much bubble right in this area right here, I can always slice it with the scissors and then reconnect it so it feels a little better. So I can reconnect it there. And now my curve's a little smoother, okay? So this is a really flexible technique for if you make a mistake, you can kind of fix it pretty easily. All right. So as you continue to work it, you will be able to make increasingly more complicated shapes. So that's kind of the beginnings of a sphere, and you can see how I have to kind of continue to add lattice work, because you want the lattice work to get dense enough that you can put the paper mache over it. So like even these spaces right in here, there's not enough, there's not yet enough stuff in there. I got to keep adding short pieces across after I get the big ones. So I might add a piece like right here, and then maybe a piece right here. And like I said, you can do that with hot glue, because at some point you're not going to be able to get the stapler in there. But you continue to add pieces until it's kind of formed into an entire ball. This technique is also good for making like a compound curve. So if you were to make a series of rings that were all kind of about the same size, I'm going to make, let's see, like 6 rings, I guess, just to show you guys what I'm thinking here. There's 4. Five. And 6. You can then staple them to a piece. While they're spaced out. Try to get them square to it. One more here. All right, so now I have them all on one piece. I can do a curve like this, and if I staple it as it's curved, so I'll put a staple on one end here, and then I'll put a little bit of a bend in it, and I'll put a staple in there, and then I'll put a little more bend in it. Put a staple in there, and a little more bend, staple, another piece here, I went a little faster than I should have, probably. And you'll see that I now have a bending sort of trunk shape, right? And then to bridge it, you just go from piece to piece. So I'm going to go 1 to 1 here on the sides. So if you ever get in a situation where you have a weird compound curve, you can just segment it. And here's what I mean by segmenting, and I'll hold it up in just a second. Let me get 2 more little pieces on here. Actually, this piece probably. Nope, I don't have to segment it. You'll get the idea. So then I did the side piece here, and I did it in segments, so it starts to really hold the shape of the thing I made, okay? So you can do this technique for any number of the different kinds of forms we need to make for our armatures. And you can use any combination of them you need to on your particular armature. So you may not need to use this technique at all, but you might use the stuffing technique and the envelope technique, or you might use the lattice technique and the envelope technique, or you might use the stuffing technique and the lattice technique, or you might use the stuffing technique, the envelope technique, and the lattice technique. So you can use all those different methods for doing this combined to kind of build the volume up that you need to build up. If you have any questions about things, just let me know and I'll come and help you, or I'll help you on Zoom. Thank you.